The Fantastic Four are easily some of the most beloved characters from Marvel Comics, mostly due to Jack Kirby's designs rather than Stan Lee's writing. Yet, their transition to live-action movies has never been particularly fruitful. The 1994 attempt was never properly released, and the early 2000s Tim Story duology showcased every flaw that plagued this era of movie making, from hollow writing to sexualized female characters, with the good old-fashioned cultural appropriation wedding to finish it off. So a brand new version with 4 of the most sought-after actors working today, and a fresh-faced director who got Marvel's foray into television off to a brilliant start, all with the brand new visual style. Matt Shakman's The Fantastic Four: First Steps look to reshape the MCU as we knew it, just in time for the biggest crossover team-up film since Avengers Endgame in Avengers Doomsday. While it differs in visuals, style, and tone from the likes of Thunderbolts or the Marvels, it still ends up falling into the basic superhero film tropes that we often see from superhero films.
The Fantastic Four: First Steps has a very basic plot. It's been 4 years since Sue Storm, her husband Reed Richards, brother Johnny, and Reed's best friend Ben Grimm went up to space as 4 physically average humans with above-average intelligence on what should have been an uneventful space mission. However, due to miscalculations on Reed's part, they all return with superpowers. Sue can create force fields and turn things, including herself, invisible. Johnny can flame on and become engulfed in flames, which allows him to fly and wield fire in battle. Reed can stretch himself to extraordinary lengths, and Ben, well, he comes back as a massive, clobbering rock man with super strength. They formed a team to protect Earth, combining their physical abilities with their extraordinary intelligence, particularly Reed, who relies more on his scientific genius than his stretchy body. At the beginning of First Steps, Sue finds out she's pregnant, much to the joy of her and Reed after 2 years of trying. Just when the Fantastic Four think that baby-proofing their Baxter-building penthouse and assembling a crib are their most pressing tasks, the Silver Surfer descends upon Earth. Now, a sexy, naked alien in the form of Julia Garner, she forewarns the Fantastic Four that Galactus, a huge, hulking space entity, is targeting their planet for destruction. When the team pays Galactus a visit on the ship he resides on, he reveals that the only condition that could stop his grand plan would be for Sue and Reed to give them their unborn child, who Galactus can detect will have cosmic abilities more powerful than his parents. The Fantastic Four must form a plan to defeat Galactus and the Silver Surfer while keeping their child safe. The basic story of a hero faced with the ultimatum of saving the world's population and the person they love the most is the kind of moral quandary that these stories were first built upon. Another aspect of First Steps that draws it back to the very genesis of this franchise. With aliens, multiverses, more big bads than the Bond series, and superhero team-ups, First Steps is both a refreshing and basic return to the foundational narrative sentiments of superhero stories. This is what makes First Steps such a change in beat from the MCU's ever-expanding catalog, which has grown so large and multidimensional that it's completely lost sight of the fact that it's supposed to be one united franchise. It also makes the film, narratively, overly familiar. At 2 hours, it runs on the shorter side of superhero films, and its meat-and-potatoes plot leaves little space for much thematic exploration. Thunderbolts did a fairly commendable job of diving into the mental weight of being a superpowered person, while James Gunn's Superman didn't try to hide its commentary on the Israel-Palestine conflict. Here, First Steps doesn't have much to say except, stick together and everything will be okay. This extends into the dialogue where everyone says exactly what they're thinking right on the nose. You're pregnant? But we've been trying for 2 years. Oh no, if we don't do that now, we will die. I'm paraphrasing, but First Steps is packed with these kinds of lines that make it feel like it's from a foregone period of filmmaking and not in the way it wants.
It's a family affair in the Fantastic Four: First Steps.
If you've seen any trailer or promotional material for First Steps, you'll know the one word that the marketing team is pushing harder than any other aspect of the film: family. And while it's a fairly twee and contrived notion to hinge the entire film on, it is the relationships that keep the movie together and on track. What made Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy the reigning supreme of superhero storytelling is that it kept the personal stakes at the heart of Spider-Man's battles against evil on a global scale. It's never too small that it feels there's no real danger or urgency, but having Mary Jane and Aunt May play such important parts in the narrative makes Spider-Man's fights feel all the more critical. And with so many of the MCU's team-ups being a chorus line of egos who only really appreciate each other in the final battle, seeing 4 superheroes who already have such a rich history that sticking together is the only option omits any of the perfunctory character tension that other superhero films rely on and can become bogged down by, as we know everyone will come together for the finale. This is most seen in how First Steps uses Sue and Reed's child, Franklin, as the crux of the entire story. Even though the plot can sometimes feel eerily close to the Twilight Saga's Breaking Dawn Part 2, as a heavily digitized baby whose parents can't figure out if he'll come out a monster or just a normal infant, he becomes the object of a creepy guy's obsession. But what feels the most invigorating about First Steps is its characterization of Sue Storm. When the MCU usually presents mothers as vengeful, tragic figures, humble stay-at-home moms who get nowhere near the action, or women with traumatizing backstories of getting their wombs removed, because, of course, the best way to make a woman seem badass is to take away her reproductive organs, First Step's presentation of Sue Storm marks a notable shift in how the MCU handle their female superheroes. It's a tedious trope that action movies at large follow of needing to present their heroines as cold as possible to lift them up to the level of men, and not having any romantic or motherly traits is the quickest and laziest way to do that. Here, Sue, unlike her 2005 counterpart, who was forced into submission by an objectified Jessica Alba doing her best, is given more character depth than any of her male cohorts, never being defined by motherhood, but not robbed of the emotional intelligence that relationships like marriage and parenthood grant a person. When the MCU is famous for removing all sexual or romantic chemistry from their stories, seeing Sue and Reed in love and navigating first-time parenthood feels like a return to earlier superhero movies that weren't afraid to make it clear that their characters fuck.
The Fantastic Four First Steps practical effects look great, but the CGI feels out of place.
Even with a script that can feel painfully predictable and rudimentary, First Steps excels in its practical effects and world building, as it's in this department that the team takes full advantage of not having to tie in to another Marvel movie. The retro-futuristic 1960s aesthetic of this Earth 838 is delicious to watch, with Pan Am air hostesses, mid-century furniture, a period-accurate Delancey Street, and tube TV screens in Times Square. It's a Marvel world like we've never seen before, making First Steps easily the most aesthetically stylized film of the entire franchise. Herbie is also an impressive addition, making him a lovable sidekick that brings levity to the team's dynamic without the help of a recognizable human voice. The sequences of the team in the Excelsior have a campy Star Trek flair to them, and it's nice to see a Marvel film putting thought and craft into production design and props. However, this is probably also why the CGI feels dated, as the up-to-date SFX look out of place with the mid-century aesthetics. The Twilight comparison goes further in how digitized baby Franklin looks, a male, less doll-like version of poor old Renesmee. The New York fight scenes remain pretty dull in comparison to the MCU's usual grand battles. Matt Shakman's direction feels much more at ease in smaller sets with dialogue-centered scenes. When it comes to the four embarking on other planets or taking on a villain taller than Godzilla, Shakman's direction loses its grip on the chaos, and the action becomes messy and hard to follow.
The cast of the Fantastic Four First Steps is mostly brilliant.
The team very nearly got the cast of First Steps completely right. Pedro Pascal, the inescapable it-man of the past 3 years, easily slips into a role a far cry from The Last of Us Joel. Yes, he's a heroic, at first reluctant but lovable father, yet he brings to life a more subdued but still impassioned Reed Richards. The film makes the clever choice not to present Reed as the leading hero of the four, but the introverted backbone who prefers science over fighting, and will do anything to protect his tribe. Ebon Moss-Bachrach, who easily has the most work to do here, makes great use of vocal cues and facial expressions to bring in a sense of humility and tragedy to Ben, despite the film gliding over his backstory of struggling with his appearance. Sadly, Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm doesn't fare as well as his castmates. Quinn is a charming, gifted, and empathetic actor, elevating a largely non-speaking part in a horror alien film into an affecting portrayal of grief and hopelessness amidst the end of the world. And coming into a universally beloved show 4 seasons in and instantly becoming a fan favorite is no easy feat. But Quinn's particular brand of endearment doesn't suit the lovable himbo that is Johnny Storm, and Quinn's portrayal is the only one that feels weaker than in the 2000s movies, as Chris Evans' obnoxious fuckboy version brought way more fun to the hollow script. Quinn is heavily relied on to provide comedic relief with quippy one-liners and ill-timed jokes, but there's something overly serious and earnest in Quinn's performance that makes these moments fall flat every time. No knock on Quinn's abilities, but his acting sensibilities may not suit the big bad world of green screen filmmaking. Vanessa Kirby unsurprisingly steals the show, not just because of her talents, but because the movie lets her. Instead of fighting for space in a room full of men, Kirby is given the space to make Sue the true center of the story. Yes, she brings the warm emotionality that keeps the film's themes of family and togetherness in focus, but she's also a balanced, fair, and dynamic leader. Kirby never falls into the trap of making Sue overly acerbic or removed to appear impenetrable. It's a hopeful signal of what women can do in superhero movies, and more importantly, what studio heads are willing to let them do. Ralph Fiennes isn't recognizable visually, but his low-res raspy voice, the closest to Alan Rickman's as you can get, is used to great effect. And Julia Garner, while looking like a Bond girl who got drowned in silver instead of gold, is still able to make the Silver Surfer into a tragic figure through her facial expressions. The fantastic first steps successfully invigorates the MCU, but it's not the tectonic shift that audiences thought it would be. The 60s aesthetic is a fun change of pace, but it more so serves as a holiday from the usual MCU beats rather than a direction-shifting renewal. It'll be interesting to see how Marvel will combine this world with the grittiness of the new Avengers. But beyond visuals, First Steps not only doesn't do anything new with the superhero genre, it returns to the very basic foundations, which makes it a great tribute to what Jack Kirby and Stan Lee first created 6 decades ago. But if you're thinking this will be a game changer for the MCU or superhero films in general, you got the wrong team. The Fantastic Four First Steps clobbers into theaters on July 25th.